Well, today I'm going to talk about a grammar topic that many people have asked me about, and I thought it would actually be a great idea if I made a video about it and explained it. Okay, so we're going to start with the topic, and it's about gerunds. Now, what is a gerund, right? Well, a gerund is a verb plus an ing form. Remember that we're going to focus on base form verbs and just add the ing. Okay, now we're going to go through some verbs, as practicing, and here I have some flashcards that is going to help us. For example, here you're able to see on the first drawing, and you see a bed and a boy basically on the bed. Now, what verb do you think it is? Exactly, it's sleeping. Good. Okay, here we have a girl going on top of the log, but if you see that she is above the log, so what do you think this verb is? Exactly, jumping. Excellent, good. Okay, here, well, I think it's something that we all want, especially now in this time of vacation, but we have to stay home. Well, here we see this verb, and I know it's easy, so yes, exactly, it's swimming. Good, perfect. Now here we see a girl that's in front of a microphone. So what do you think she's doing? Let me check. Exactly, good. She's singing. Perfect. Okay, now here we see a boy that has a book on top of the table and he's looking at it thorough. So I'm guessing can you guess? Good, perfect. It's reading. Excellent. Now, here we have the same boy, but if you notice, he has a pen this time. So what verb do you think this could be? Perfect, good, writing, excellent. Now, last but not least, we have two boys and they're with toys, right? I could see that there are like shape figures, and also we have a truck and a car. What do you think they're doing? Exactly, they're playing. Perfect. Well, now that we went through, some of the verbs, some of the basic verbs, we're going to go a little bit more with the topic gerunds. Now, in this case, I want you to focus that just because you see a verb that's with an ing form, it doesn't mean that it has to be with the verb to be or that it has to be a continuous form, right? Now, let's take that a little bit off our site and let's just focus on a gerund. It doesn't matter what tense it is because it could be future, it could be present, and it could be in the past or even in past perfect form. Tenses, sorry. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the three rules. The first rule would be gerunds as a subject. Okay, that would be one. The second would be a gerund as a direct object. And the third one is going to be about a gerund with a preposition. Now, we are going to focus on this because I think it's very important for us to be using gerunds. It gives us a little bit more of capacity to express ourselves and at the same time give our opinion, or let's say something that we might like or we might dislike. Okay, so here we're going to go through with the first rule. So let's explain the first one. Mainly, it's used for giving opinions or for saying something in general, meaning that I'm not going to talk about, a person did this. I'm actually going to say in general, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. Now, we all know that a subject, it usually starts at the beginning, right? Like when we're talking about basic English, intermediate or advanced, they always teach us that in an active voice sentence, we're going to start with a subject, a verb, and so on. So you kind of get the idea that if it's a gerund as a subject, it's going to replace the subject, right? So we're not going to start with it anymore. In this case, we have the first example. For example, eating pupusas is good or it's delicious, right? So in order for us to look at the structure of a gerund in this type of rule, we're going to use a gerund phrase plus a verb and then a complement, as you can see here. Good. So what am I talking about, or what do I mean when I say gerund phrase? Well, basically it would be a gerund, remember, verb ing, and something that goes along with the gerund. For example, we have eating. We have a lot of things that we could think about if I just hear the word eating, right? Eating pupusas, right? Eating healthy, correct? Okay, how about playing? Playing, we're talking about playing sports. Here in our country, you know that we're fanatics when it comes with soccer, so we could say playing soccer, and it would go through with it. Just by combining those two words, that playing, which is gerund, and soccer, which would be the phrase, that's where we combine the gerund phrase. Okay, so I want you to understand that at the beginning, we're going to be talking about that, like at the beginning of the sentence, and then we're going to go through the rest of the sentences, which later would be a verb, right? Now, in this case, we have our first example, which is watching tutorials help you understand any topic. Okay, if you notice, we're talking about the first word that is gerund, watching tutorials, right? That would be my gerund phrase. And then the verb, if you notice, it has an S. It would be helps, right? I want to make a little bit emphasis on this because every time we're going to use a gerund phrase at the beginning of a sentence, all of the verbs that I'm planning to use after that have to go with the S form. Okay, so in this case, that's why we have watching tutorials helps you understand any topic. Okay, let's go with the second one. And in this case, I'm going to be using the verb to be. Okay, we have making videos is fun. So yeah, in this case, we have making what, right? Videos. That would be my gerund phrase, making videos. And then I'm describing it by using the verb to be. In this case would be is. So making videos is fun. Noticing again, as I had stated before, that we're not going to be using the R, right? We're going to be using the S form. Okay, so please make sure that every time you're using this type of sentence, we're focused on the S form, meaning that if it's any verb to be describing a gerund phrase, it's always going to be is. Okay, or let's say we want to make or add a verb to it, make sure that the verb is always in S form. Okay, good. Okay, now we're going to go with the second one. We're going to use this to give a little bit more emphasis on what we're trying to express in our sentence. So the structure that we're going to use in this case is going to be the subject. Now, as we had stated before in rule number 1, we said that the subject is usually what begins in a active voice sentence, right? So in this case, we already know what our main subjects are. For example, I, you, she, he, it, we, they. And it could be any type of singular or plural nouns. Okay, so we're going to start the structure by subjects, and then we're going to go with the verb. Now, this verb could actually be in the future. We could be using will plus the verb in base form. We could use the verb in just base form, simple present, or we could use it in simple past tense. Also in past participle, making the sentence, in past perfect. So this is the part where I think that it's very important, because this verb is going to determine if I'm talking about the future, the present, or the past, right? So I'm going to be very careful about that verb, because it'll depend on how I want to express myself, like in what tense. Then we're going to go with gerund. So yes, again, we have the subject, the verb, and after the verb, the gerund. Remember, a gerund is a verb plus ing. After that, we could have our gerund phrase, or if not, a complement, depending on how you want to see it. So here we have our first example. I wanted to make 3 examples and, first focus on the future. For example, here we have, I will start going to the gym. I think I'm going to take that advice. But yeah, so if you notice, we have I as the subject. We have will start, that thanks to that modal will, we are able to, determine that is in the future. And then we have going. This going, remember, the verb would be in base form go, but because it's gerund, I have to add an ing. So it would be going, and then my complement, right, to the gym. Good. Let's go to the next example. Perfect. Here it says, she keeps on doing her best. Now, I wanted to use this example because it's on a third person, right? Here we're talking about a subject that is with she, and then keeps. Notice that that verb has an S form. Why do you think that is? Perfect, yes. It's because we're using the simple present form, and if it's a third person, remember that we need to add an S on my verb. Good job. Okay, so if you notice, we have she, keeps, and then my gerund. What would that be? Doing. Yes. So it means that I have my base form do, but because I'm using it as a gerund, I have to put an ing form. So it means that I'm going to put on the ing and then any type of complement, which is in this case her best. So that's why we have this example. She keeps on doing her best. Perfect, good. Now let's go with the third example. In this case, we're talking about a sentence that is in simple past. Okay, in this case, we have he admitted lying to everyone. Notice that admitted, it is in simple past. And thanks to that verb, it changed the tense, right? And I'm talking about something that happened, earlier on. So after that, we have the verb lie. In this case, because it is going to be a gerund, we have to add again an ing, right? So we have he admitted lying to everyone. Okay, are you ready for the third rule? Here we go. Okay, our final rule would be a gerund with a preposition. Now, before we start with this, what is a preposition? In this case, a preposition is a connector, right? It helps us connect a sentence. An example, here we have a pencil, right? A blue pencil. And here we have my hand, right? If I put this right here and I want to make a sentence, I will need a preposition. Now we do have lots of prepositions, and right now, because of where the location of the pencil is, we're going to use preposition of place. Now here, I cannot say, for example, a blue pencil hand. No, right? In this case, I will need to make that connection so you would understand the location of the pencil. So I could say, the pencil is on my hand. See how important a preposition is? You would be using that so you could understand a little bit more of the location of a pencil, in this case, pencil, right? Now, we do have different types of prepositions. We have prepositions, as I said before, of place, but we also have of time. Well, we have prepositions as in, on, about, at, for, to, and so much more. Now, the examples that we're going to use is that we're going to have a preposition first, and then we're going to have the gerund. How does this work? Well, the structure is the following. We're always going to have our subject. We're going to have a verb, right? Remember that this verb is the one that's going to determine if it's going to be in the future, in the present, or in the past. And then we're going to use a preposition. After the preposition goes the gerund and then a complement. Now, what we're going to do is first we're going to, give an example that's with the preposition in. It's as teachers, we persist in doing our best. Now, we have another preposition that would be on. I plan on buying groceries today. Then we have another preposition, which I think it's very common because it's about, and the verb would be think about. So they think about working overtime. Okay, now if you notice in those three types of examples that I just gave you, after in, on, and about, we have gerunds. We cannot say, for example, they think about work overtime. That would be incorrect. So keep in mind, right? Try to, go over or review the prepositions. So every time you hear a preposition and you want to say an action about it, you want to include a verb, make sure that that verb is a gerund. Okay? Well, I really hope you liked the explanation that I gave you about the gerunds, and I wish you the best. Remember to stay home and wash your hands, and I hope to see you all soon. Take care. Bye.